Okay, so we are looking at a stack of reporting today that feels, oh, well, it just feels heavy.
Hmm.
I've got pages here from Axios, the New York Times, and Reuters, all synthesized into this cult report. And the dateline is immediate. It is February 2026.
Right?
The topic is war. And I don't mean a minor skirmish or a proxy fight somewhere. I mean the United States potentially launching a full-scale military campaign against Iran within the next 2 weeks.
It's really the single most volatile moment we've seen in the Middle East in, probably 2 decades.
Yeah.
And if you're just reading the headlines, you might think, oh, here we go again, just more saber rattling. But when you actually dig into these documents, which is our mission today, the picture is completely different.
It really is.
The administration is completely split down the middle. The military is moving hardware on a massive scale.
Yeah.
And there is a very specific, very strange silence coming from the one guy who should be doing the most talking right now.
We are definitely going to get to that silence later, the missing admiral, because that part actually gave me chills when I read the brief.
Yeah, it's wild.
But let's start with the man standing right in the middle of the tracks here. General Dan Kane.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Exactly. The report actually calls him the reluctant warrior.
Which is a label that should really make you pause. I mean, General Kane isn't a dove. He's a career warfighter.
Right, you don't get to that position by avoiding conflict.
Exactly. But the reporting from inside the Situation Room is that he is the primary friction point stopping a go order right now. He is telling President Trump, essentially, do not confuse luck with strategy.
He's referencing the Venezuela operation from last month, right?
Right.
The January operation.
Right. And to understand why we're on the brink of war with Iran today, you have to understand what happened in Venezuela in January.
Okay, let's unpack that for the listener, because the reports frame that operation as a massive success.
Oh, by all accounts in these sources, it was a masterclass in modern special operations. It was a fast decapitation strike. They captured Nicolas Maduro and achieved regime change effectively overnight.
And General Kane was totally on board for that one.
Backed at 100%. The reporting notes he told the president there was a high probability of success. And, well, he was right. It was clean.
So, logically, if I'm the president, or, if I'm one of the more hawkish voices in the cabinet, I'm looking at that win and thinking, okay, we've got the momentum. The military is incredibly sharp right now. Let's just run the exact same play on Tehran. Let's fix the big problem.
That is the psychological trap right there. It's the hot hand fallacy. You think because you made the three-pointer, you can easily make the half-court shot.
Yeah, but they're completely different games.
Exactly. Kane is trying to explain that Venezuela and Iran are not just different countries. They are entirely different universes in terms of military complexity.
So break that down a bit for us. Based on the reports, why can't we just do a quote-unquote Venezuela on Iran?
Well, geography, for one. Venezuela has a specific topography that allowed for that kind of rapid insertion. Iran is a fortress. It's mountainous, it's vast, and its most critical military infrastructure is buried deep underground. But honestly, more importantly, the adversary is different.
How so?
In Venezuela, the structure essentially collapsed when the head was cut off. Iran has spent 40 years building a decentralized command structure designed specifically to survive a decapitation strike.
So Kane is arguing that if you hit them, they don't just fold up and surrender. They actually fight back.
And they fight back hard. Kane's specific warning to the president, according to the notes synthesized in the Cult report, is that this comes with substantial risks of a protracted regional conflict.
Not a quick win.
Not at all. He's warning about high American casualties. He's trying to break the illusion in that room that this can be a swift, clean operation.
But there's another reason the administration feels so confident right now, isn't there? It's not just the Venezuela win.
Right.
It's the 12-day war from last June. I remember the headlines back then, but looking at the deep analysis in these documents, it really seems like that event might have taught the White House the exact wrong lesson.
That is such a critical piece of the puzzle here. Back in June 2025, the U.S. conducted a massive air campaign against Iranian nuclear facilities. It lasted 12 days.
And the casualty count for the U.S.?
0. Literally 0 American casualties.
That is just insane to think about.
Yeah.
12 days of heavy bombing against a major adversary and nobody got a scratch? How is that even possible?
It was a standoff campaign. We use long-range cruise missiles, stealth assets, heavy cyber warfare to blind their radar systems.
So nobody was actually kicking down door.
Right. It was hitting concrete and centrifuges from a distance. It wasn't war in the sense of taking ground or trying to topple the government. It was essentially a demolition job.
Okay, I see where this is going in the minds of the policymakers. So you have the clean win in Venezuela, which was regime change, and you have the clean win in Iran last June, which was a massive bombing run. If you mash those two together in your head, you get this dangerous idea that we can do a regime change in Iran with 0 casualties.
Exactly. You start to assume you're untouchable. But Pentagon officials, cited in the New York Times report, are basically screaming that this is a false equivalency.
They're trying to ring the alarm bell.
They are. They're explicitly warning that a new campaign one aimed at toppling the regime or forcing a total surrender would fundamentally differ from those June strikes. You just can't replay the tape and expect the same movie.
Because Iran won't just sit there and take it this time.
Right. They absorbed the hit in June because it was limited to nuclear sites. They could spin that domestically. But if the goal is the end of the Islamic Republic, the gloves come completely off. And this leads us to the sovereign risk section of the report.
Yeah, this is the stuff that keeps generals up at night. Let's look at the numbers here. We have roughly 40,000 U.S. troops in the region right now.
Between 30,000 and 40,000, yes. They're scattered across bases in Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar.
And these aren't hidden secret bases. Everyone knows exactly where they are.
They are static targets. And the Reuters reporting on Iran's arsenal is very, very specific. We aren't just talking about old, inaccurate SCD missiles anymore.
Right. The technology has evolved.
Massively. Iran has developed precision-guided ballistic missiles, like the Sejil-2, which has a range of 2,000 kilometers, and they have these massive fleets of suicide drones.
The drone swarms. We've seen what those can do in other modern conflicts, and it's terrifying.
Now imagine hundreds of those launched simultaneously at a base housing 2,000 American soldiers. Even if your air defense is 90% effective.
Which is a very high success rate.
It's incredibly high. But even then, that still means 10% of those drones get through. And the Iranian mission to the UN was incredibly blunt about their intentions.
Yeah, I have the quote right here. They issued a statement saying that if attacked, quote, all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region would constitute legitimate targets.
Legitimate targets. That is diplomatic speak for we will kill everyone we can reach.
And they can reach almost everyone. And it's not just direct fire from Iranian soil, right? The New York Times highlights the proxy network.
Right. You have the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, various militias in Iraq and Syria.
This is what the report calls the 360-degree threat environment.
Exactly. If the U.S. strikes Tehran, suddenly a U.S. destroyer in the Red Sea is taking anti-ship fire from Yemen. A base in Syria is getting mortared by local militias. An embassy in Beirut is under siege.
It's everywhere all at once.
And it stretches U.S. resources to the breaking point. You can't put a Patriot missile battery on every single street corner in the Middle East.
Speaking of those batteries, the report mentions a frantic military buildup happening right now. We are moving serious heavy metal into the region.
It's intense. The Pentagon is urgently deploying additional Patriot and TAD systems.
KA being the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense.
Right, which is designed specifically to intercept ballistic missiles. But these systems are limited. We do not have an infinite supply of interceptors.
It becomes a math problem at that point.
Exactly. If Iran tries to oversaturate the defenses by firing everything they have, do you have more bullets than they have targets? Usually the answer is no.
And it's not just defensive movements. The report also mentions B-2 bombers.
This is the detail that really signals intent. U.S.-based B-2 stealth bombers have been on high alert for nearly a month.
So for the listener, explain what high alert actually means for a B-2 fleet. Is it just pilots, carrying beepers and staying close to the base?
No, it is way more intense than that. It's expensive and it's exhausting for the force. It means crews are pre-briefed on specific target packages. Maintenance cycles are dramatically accelerated. The aircraft are fully fueled, armed, and ready to launch on incredibly short notice.
Wow.
You burn through your readiness when you do this. You don't keep the strategic stealth bomber fleet on high alert for a month just to send a diplomatic message. You do it because you think you might genuinely need to drop bunker busters tonight.
So the gun is essentially cocked. The military is bracing for impact. But the actual decision to pull the trigger, that's happening back in Washington, in the Situation Room.
Right.
And based on these leaks, it sounds like a chaotic Thanksgiving dinner where everyone at the table hates each other.
Divided inner circle is the polite term the cult report uses. It's really a battle for the president's ear and maybe his soul.
Okay, let's break down the factions. We know General Kane is pressing the brake pedal. Who is actually standing with him?
Surprisingly, the vice president, J.D. Vance.
J.D. Vance. Is he taking a moral stance here, or is this a political calculation?
It reads as highly pragmatic. The sources in the Axios report deny he is openly opposed to the president, but they say he is the one rigorously grilling the military and intelligence officials.
Playing the skeptic.
Yes, he's asking the day after questions. Okay, we strike, then what? How do we actually get out? Does this turn into another 20-year Middle East occupation? He's actively advocating for restraint.
And he's got the envoys working the phones, too.
Right, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. They are actually scheduled to meet the Iranian foreign minister, Abbas Araki, in Geneva this Thursday.
Wait, so we have B-2 stealth bombers warming up their engines on the tarmac, while at the same exact time, Kushner is trying to book a conference room in Geneva for peace talks.
It's the classic madman theory of negotiation. You show the other guy the bombers so that your diplomat has maximum leverage at the table. Kushner and Witkoff are urging Trump to just give diplomacy time. Let us get a deal. Use the threat of the bombers, but don't actually drop the bombs.
But then you have the other ear of the president, the hawkish faction, Senator Lindsey Graham.
Right. The reporting says Graham called Trump on Sunday and basically told him to ignore the cautious advisors.
Cautious advisors, presumably meaning the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and his own vice president.
Pretty much. Graham's view is that Iran is just playing for time. He believes the window of opportunity is closing rapidly, and that if you don't hit them right now, you'll regret it when they unveil a nuclear weapon next year. He is aggressively pressuring Trump to disregard the military risks and just proceed with the attack.
And we know the president loves a deadline.
He does. He has given Iran a 10 to 15-day window to agree to a comprehensive nuclear deal.
Which is, that's nothing. In diplomatic terms, 10 days is barely enough time to agree on the shape of the table.
It's not a negotiation timeline. It's an ultimatum. And it forces the issue. It means we aren't just circling in a holding pattern. The clock is actively counting down.
Right, so that's the dynamic in the room. You've got the hawk and Graham, the skeptic and Vance, the diplomats, and the reluctant general.
Right.
But there is one major person who is not in that room. And honestly, this is the part of the cult report that I cannot stop thinking about, Admiral Brad Cooper.
The commander of CNTCOM, Central Command.
For the listener who might not be totally familiar with the military org chart, CNTCOM isn't just a desk job in the Pentagon. If a war starts in the Middle East, Admiral Cooper is the literal guy who fights it, right?
Absolutely. He moves the ships, he orders the specific airstrikes, he manages the defense of those 40,000 troops we just talked about. He is the theater commander.
So operationally, he is the most important person in the military chain of command for this specific conflict.
Without a doubt.
And yet, the report notes that he has been completely excluded from recent Situation Room meetings.
It goes further than that. It says he hasn't even communicated with the president since the crisis escalated in early January. That is a massive, glaring anomaly.
How do you even explain that? Is he just too busy preparing the theater?
No. The report specifically calls it an unusual arrangement. It heavily implies he is being deliberately shut out. And there are a few ways to read this, and honestly, none of them are comforting.
Give me the theories. What are you seeing here?
Theory 1. He disagrees with the attack plan even more strongly than General Kane does. Maybe he thinks the military objective is unachievable, or that the casualty estimates are suicidal, and the White House just doesn't want that kind of negativity in the room while they're trying to make a decision.
So they basically put the guy on mute because he knows the most and they don't like his answers.
It's very possible. Theory 2 is more about control. By funneling all military advice solely through General Kane, the White House keeps the inner circle incredibly tight. Kane becomes the only military voice.
Which prevents conflicting advice.
Exactly. If Cooper says, we need 5 carriers to do this safely, and Kane says, well, we only have 2 available, that creates hesitation. If you cut Cooper out completely, you streamline the decision-making process.
But you also blind yourself to the ground-level operational reality.
Completely. You lose the theater perspective, and Theory 3 is even darker.
Let's hear it.
Maybe they are planning something so sensitive or so risky that they are intentionally bypassing the standard combatant command structure until the last possible second. But regardless of which theory is true, think about what this means for the actual troops on the ground.
Yeah, if I'm a brigade commander sitting in a base in Iraq, and I find out my ultimate boss, the admiral, isn't even on speaking terms with the commander-in-chief. That is terrifying.
It strongly suggests a breakdown in the fundamental machinery of U.S. war planning. Usually the CNTCOM commander is virtually living in the White House during a crisis of this magnitude. His absence is the loudest signal that something is deeply wrong with the process.
It also puts an unbelievable amount of pressure on General Kane. He's carrying the water for the entire military establishment all by himself.
And remember, Kane is the one actively saying, don't do it. So you have the sole military voice in the room advocating against the war, while the political pressure from people like Senator Graham is just ramping up daily. It is an absolute pressure cooker.
So let's look at where we stand. We have a 10 to 15-day deadline ticking down. We have a diplomatic track that feels like a total Hail Mary. And we have a military track that is locked, loaded, and fully deployed.
And we had a mission for this deep dive, which was to figure out why the military risks are higher than ever before. And I think we found it in these sources.
It's the overconfidence.
It's the convergence of overconfidence from previous wins in Venezuela in June, a fundamental misunderstanding of the enemy's retaliatory capabilities, and a deeply fractured decision-making process at the very top.
It feels like the administration is trying to thread a needle, but they're using a sledgehammer to do it. They want to use the extreme threat of war to force a diplomatic deal. That's the Kirshner play we discussed.
Right.
But once you actually put B-2s on high alert and deploy fatty batteries across the Middle East, the machinery takes on a life of its own.
That is the tragic history of warfare. Mobilization can quickly become a self-fulfilling prophecy. You build up so much capability and you spend so much money and political capital doing it that using it starts to look like the only way to justify the expense.
Right. The logic becomes, well, we sent the carriers all the way out there. We have to do something.
Exactly.
Plus, what happens if Iran just calls the bluff? If the 15 days pass and they just say, no deal.
And the president is totally cornered. If he backs down after all these ultimatums, he looks incredibly weak on the global stage.
Yeah.
If he strikes, he triggers the massive regional war General Kane is warning him about.
And yet, the senior administration official quoted in the Axios report tried to downplay all of this tension.
Oh, right. They gave that very measured quote. They said, quote, "The decision as to whether to attack, and if so, when and how, has not yet been made."
Which is technically true, I'm sure. The final order hasn't been signed.
It's technically true, but it ignores the reality of military physics. You do not move two full aircraft carrier strike groups and alert the strategic bomber force just to see what happens. The pieces are actively being placed on the board for a checkmate. The only question is whether the other player flips a table before you can make the final move.
It's fascinating and terrifying how the ghost of that Venezuela operation hangs over all of this. We started there, and it really is the crux of the issue. The success of that January operation genuinely convinced some powerful people that the U.S. military is just invincible again.
It restored a sense of swagger in Washington, but swagger does not stop incoming ballistic missiles.
No, it doesn't.
General Kane knows that. He knows that Iran has been preparing for this specific, exact fight for 40 years. They aren't going to be surprised by U.S. air power. They have built their entire military doctrine around absorbing it and punishing us elsewhere.
And that punishment falls directly on those 40,000 U.S. troops deployed in the region.
That's the bottom line. As much as we talk about high-level strategy, this isn't a video game. If the decision in the Situation Room is go, there are tens of thousands of Americans in range of very lethal weaponry within minutes.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the reports, I want to leave you, the listener, with a thought to mull over. It goes back to that missing admiral.
Admiral Brad Cooper.
Think about this. If you were truly just bluffing, if this massive military buildup was all just a show of force to help Jared Kushner get a signature on a piece of paper in Geneva, wouldn't you want your scariest theater-level admiral front and center?
You absolutely would.
Wouldn't you want him on TV, walking into the Oval Office looking grim and completely ready for war?
You'd want the unified front. You'd want to project to Iran that the entire military apparatus and the president are in perfect lockstep.
But they aren't doing that. They are hiding him. Which makes me wonder, are we just watching a diplomatic leverage play that's being poorly managed? Or are the people pushing for war actively trying to remove the institutional obstacles before the final order is given?
Well, with the deadline actively ticking down, we won't have to wait long to find out.
10 to 15 days, that's the window we're looking at. We will definitely be watching. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the source material.